Hey guys, back here with another Troglodyne vlog. This time we're going to be riffing on one of the ripped from the headlines of Hacker News, Y Combinator stuff.
Yeah, I saw this one the other day come over, and it's whenever I see something that's talking about not necessarily pathologies, but things you commonly see in development organizations, but doing it in this very emotional type of I'm putting people in emotional bags like I'm MBTI or some of those ridiculous personality categorizations. It always misses the point in that it is not telling you why these things occur in the first place, and that maybe this is actually not only a good thing, or that it's at least unavoidable. You
Well,
know,
right, and the collectivization that takes place in someone's mind whenever you throw them and stuff them into those bins pretty much guarantees that whatever problems those present, you're not going to be able to get to the root cause of for that individual if it's being a problem for them because they're individuals with their own problems. So, like, say, if we go down to what it's talking about
these
here,
four
these four
dangerous
dangerous,
animals.
yeah, like a hippo. I mean, yeah, sure, they're dangerous whenever they got their tail going.
Yeah, and spraying diarrhea everywhere, right?
But like which I mean, at least considering what it's describing here, this sounds like the type of manager that does that, right?
Yeah.
But
But the idea is that it's the highest paid person's opinion. That doesn't even necessarily need to be the manager. It could just be the senior developer or whatever. Well, the fact is that he's saying don't let a hippo kill your ideas. Inform them with data and make them a data driven hippo. Well, the thing is, why do you care about your ideas getting killed? Because 9 times out of 10, your ideas suck. Okay?
well, or they'd need some sort of backing, some sort of way for that idea to become a reality through execution. And like, if you have a really good idea, chances are you're probably not going to be working in a big organization. You're going to be working for yourself, making that idea a reality.
Yeah, and that all sort of comes to where is the perspective of the author and what is he trying to get this actually across. He's coming from the perspective of a manager, and he's trying to couch this in a way that it's going to sort of subtly brainwash. That's not necessarily the best word, but he's trying to get the employees in the mind frame they need to be to
Right,
actually convince management to do things that they consider valuable.
well, it's more akin to a mind meld, where you're
Yeah.
trying to get buy-in, some sort of mental share.
But the point is that most management, they're going to need some kind of data. They're going to need something that they can actually understand to actually make a decision,
yeah, but also at the end of the day, a employee, someone who is chasing that sort of thing that has those ideas, they need to be ready for disappointment, like seriously ready, because especially the highest paid, like say they're saying a CEO or a VP,
They don't.
there's always that chance that they're just going to tell you, no, we're going to do it this way. And the reason that wins every time is, well, why did they hire you? Did they hire you specifically because of that idea you're talking about, and that they wanted that idea
No, they wanted
implemented?
you to be a
No.
cog in the machine 9 times out of 10. They
Right.
didn't hire you for your ideas. They hired you
hire
because they
you
need work.
for your skills.
Yeah, exactly.
So
They're supposed to be coming up with the ideas. That's how they see themselves.
right, right. And so if you're actually trying to do that sort of thing, informing them with data is often the wrong approach depending on their mental state. Sometimes doing more Machiavellian manipulative approaches are actually necessary there. Like, say, doing things that drop subtle hints to make them think it was their idea in the first place.
Or, for example, using traditional emotional hooks, doing those sorts of things that have nothing to do with data but have everything to do with persuasion.
Right. Right.
Because those are the things that actually are going to work at the end of the day. If you really want your ideas to work, data is useless.
Well, data serves a point, but it's a prop.
Yeah,
Ultimately,
it's a visual aid in any kind of presentation you're making. And even then, the data is always going to be deceptive to some degree, in that not everybody's going to be in your mental frame, and they're not going to necessarily emphasize what you find important.
right. So you may have all the important data in the world about how this idea can make the company money, but you may also not have the type of information regarding, well, let's say, what are the opportunity costs here? Do we have some sort of opportunity that I miss by implementing this idea? You never know that as the guy that's proposing that, especially if it's to management, because management, they're really going to tell you of their long-term plans because they just don't want leaks, that sort of thing, of
Well, and
whatever their
frankly,
ideas
doing
are.
that is simply just not in their best interest.
Yeah.
So they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so the next guy that they're sort of talking about here is working on the latest fire, which is just sort of talking about this is the pathology that almost every organization gets into, where basically you have a bunch of dead weight, and they talk about that essentially as the next dangerous animal. And that just guarantees you're going to get a minority of people who are devoted to actually doing the work, and all they have time for is putting out hair fires for your rapidly expanding middle management. Okay.
Right.
And then the rest of the people, they've realized that their ideas don't matter, and they've basically just checked out and are deciding to pick up a paycheck until they can get something better.
Right.
Or just pick up a paycheck and don't think of something better because they're not really particularly creative thinkers.
Right. I mean, they're the type that is either A, content with trading their time for money, because some people are, or they're B, the people that have gotten the point in their career where they've learned all they can from this business and are actively looking for a new opportunity.
Yeah.
Those types, there's really not much you can do for them to make them say really here in name only, so to speak, because that's just not what they're looking for. If you wanted them to turn from a rhino to a wolf, or say someone else that was useful to your company,
which, by the way, he doesn't actually mention who is the useful type of person you want in your company.
Well, or how to turn these people into someone that's more valuable, right?
Yeah.
You can't keep them stuffed in a bin. You can notice those sorts of tendencies in a person, but every one of them is going to have have worn that hat at one time in their lives.
Yeah, everybody's going to be a rhino eventually. Give it enough time and it's going to happen. Okay. The difference between the wisdom and not is generally whether they realize that they need to move on when they become rhino.
Right.
And so that really just brings to question, why do people actually do the wolf thing? Because it's the opposite side of the coin. If you're having to do nothing but maintenance all the time, if you have to have a team devoted to this because essentially your organization is dysfunctional and not capable of taking out its own trash, essentially, every team, then that really tells you a lot, in that you probably don't need to be in this organization either, because it's just not going to be able to continue the forward momentum that it needs to actually grow to the level that you want to grow your career, right?
Yep. So that's how a lot of people wind up in dead end kind of positions, that they eventually become resentful. And in many ways, if you note that you have a lot of those rhinos, that's your former wolf in almost every case.
Yeah, a rhino is just a disillusioned wolf who realized that, maybe I shouldn't actually fight the good fight. Maybe the fight isn't worth fighting, and that it never was, in fact. And that almost every single rhino, that is their story, is that they were a wolf until they mastered how to work at this company, and then they realized, wait a minute, this is not what it's cracked up to be. This is all a bunch of crap. And so then they go on to zebra, zero evidence but really arrogant. This is actually skilled people who have good instincts and who generally know what they're doing, but they don't listen to management because they consider management to generally be morons, which in many cases they in fact are. With regard to the technical aspects of these things.
Yes, but as far as the biggest flaw for these guys is they're too dumb to go into business for themselves, or they're behind an 8-ball or something like that, but they can't control themselves regarding submitting themselves to someone else's authority.
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, there are a lot of people that's why they are entrepreneurs, because basically their response to authority was, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But
that's just not how they live. But the fact is, these people can still be useful to your organization if you can give up the emotional investment you have as a manager, that I got to be the boss and I got to do and I got to do and I got no. Okay. The thing is, you have to understand that the only way you can motivate these people is that if you have a project that they're actually interested in. And you have to understand that, well, then that means I shouldn't hire them as employees, because there's no guarantee that this person is going to have a project they find interesting in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. What you need to do is hire these people as contractors, because they're highly passionate and they're usually very knowledgeable about the subject, but their interest will wane, okay? And then you need to let them move on as a contractor. So that's really all that is hiring too many employees is all that particular
Right.
dangerous animal is.
Right. Because despite the corporate meta being what it is today, it is not a good fit for the majority of individuals. The 1099 life, that sort of thing, is actually a much better arrangement for most people.
Yeah, because
Now,
they
a lot of
like
people,
running their lives, they like
yeah,
having their resources, they like having their work set up how they want it, they like having high productivity in the way they want it.
yeah, it's about setting the boundaries for the relationship with this company in a way that makes the employee happy and the employer happy. Whereas for the most part, the corporate meta has been,
Welcome to the family.
well, it's been about putting the cult in corporate culture for the most part.
Yeah, and a lot of people are just not interested, and they're never going to be interested.
Well, because we've touched on this before in some other casts, but like once you've been in the cult, once you've deprogrammed, once you've done that, even if it was the best experience in your life, like say
you can't do it twice. Yeah,
it's why so many people, whenever they're in the military, you ask them about the military. Some of the greatest adventures they had in their life were when they were in the military. But if you ask them, would you go back to the military? It sounds like you really had a great time. No, man, that place sucked.
yeah, because it's one of those things. You might have had a little bit of adventure, you might have had stuff like that, but it was tiny moments punctuating extreme stretches of boredom. Okay, that's sort of like the way they describe the life as a mathematician. It's just nonstop boring toil punctuated by the occasional eureka. Okay, that's how most jobs are. That's how you have to accept that's going to be. And so nobody really wants to sort of admit that that's how it actually works. And so they're going to instead try and imagine things to be grandiose and so forth when they're frankly just not. So.
Yeah, and we really shouldn't have that sort of grandiose feeling regarding any sort of job that we have, because ultimately we're just here to solve other people's problems and to solve our own problems.
Yeah, and make
So,
money in the equation.
yeah.
It shouldn't be complicated. It shouldn't be a relationship that's hard to understand. There's nothing mystical about it other than your branding, which
Yeah.
is literally magic. But anyways, that's sort of what I'm trying to get here is that a lot of this talk here was just sort of I'm putting people into magical boxes when I'm not really understanding, well, why did people get in the box in the first place? Because that's the only way you can actually solve these problems is, well, why did they get in the box in the first damn place?
Yeah.
The guy, the rhino, they're in the box for good reason. And in fact, they should be running the show. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
No, there's nothing you can do about that. And that's why his recommendations were so silly in that it was like, oh, just turn them into a data-driven rhino. Well, that means they don't have to do any changes, and you as an employee have to change your behavior and the way you interact with them.
Yeah, that's not exactly a counter spell for this magic here.
No, that means that they're not a dangerous animal, that in fact, they're a necessary animal, and it's in fact good and not dangerous.
Yeah.
And you look at a thing like a wolf. Well, if you removed all the wolves from most organizations,
They'd fall apart overnight.
yeah, they would instantaneously implode because the rest of their bulk is nothing but these rhinos who are just picking up a paycheck and doing the bare minimum to get by.
Yeah, and almost all management organizations that are cursed with this type of meta, which I've seen
Most
several
of them,
places, most
quite
of them,
frankly.
the reason why this is so identifiable and this resonated on, say, HN, that sort of thing, is because it's ubiquitous.
Yes.
And the reason this dysfunction is ubiquitous, it kind of lays forth the lie that is at the heart of much of corporate management, where they're trying to treat employees as resources when ultimately they're individuals.
Yeah.
They're, Mr. Meat Brain, bags of chemicals and flesh with a whole bunch of emotions and a whole bunch of thinking going on.
Yeah, and when you act like they can be cogs in a machine instead of more like, I'm actually contracting with this other guy who has his own set of crap that I got to deal with, and some of it's good, some of it's bad. Instead of, no, this is a McDonald's brand cog that I can just place in and it's just going to work and it's never going to cause me trouble. No, that's not how any interpersonal relationships work.
Well, and frankly, it's one of the most perniciously cynical viewpoints that you can have, that each one of your employees is inherently replaceable.
No.
Because think of what that does as a manager whenever you're thinking of your underlings. You're never going to view them as an equal. You're never going to view them as someone that is, on your level.
You're never going to be able to motivate them because you'll never understand them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
when you don't see someone as an equal, their opinion is automatically invalid.
Yep.
Okay. It doesn't matter how egalitarian of a person you think you are. If you don't perceive them, you won't do it.
Yeah.
It's been borne out in many studies. This is pretty much a lock. You just won't.
Yeah, because what your brain does whenever you don't view someone else as an equal is you view them as an insect.
Yeah,
literally like a bug that gets squashed under your heel. You would have that little amount of regard for them.
Yeah, they're literally an NPC. Okay, that's
Yeah.
why that meme exists, is because it's essentially saying you are not of the same social class as me. You are not in my in group, and therefore you're not even worthy of consideration. Neither your ideas or your person in general is worth consideration. And when you consider people resources with your HR department, that's exactly what you're saying. When you do this as a manager, that's exactly what you're doing. And so then people wonder, well, why do we have all these rhinos, these people who are totally checked out and don't care about the company? Well, because you don't care about them. That's why.
Yeah. Despite all of the perks, all of the whatever, all of the stuff that hangs around modern corporate to make employees comfortable with the situation,
yeah.
Ultimately, what
Comfort
I see
does not necessarily
is that it's not coming out of a place of caring. It's
Yeah.
coming out of a place of risk management. It's not coming out of any sort of personal link with people. Or
It doesn't
like
build
that.
any emotional engagement.
Yeah,
Okay,
more
no
importantly.
emotional investment is built with that approach, and that's the primary problem. The reason why you have these people who are checked out, or these people who are on their way to burning out and checking out and just putting out hair fires all day and becoming very cynical about it, is because you're not building this emotional investment to where they feel like I'm making a difference in the world. No, they feel like I'm just, grinding out some more crud and it's not going to change the world a single bit no matter what I do. Or no matter how hard I work, the company's just going to betray me because they don't care.
Yeah, whereas instead you see people that work for startups that have been massively betrayed, that have worked more hours than a wolf, that have worked like way harder,
total lunatics, and got nothing.
Ruined their lives and their health working for startups because they believed. It's literally that scene from Conan where Thulsa Doom orders the girl to jump off the cliff. Like, if
you want your company to work, you have to do that. I mean, this is what a lot of the corporate experts are talking. That's why this whole corporate cult stuff is out there. But like the U.S. Army did with the Prussian military, they're copying the forms, but they're not understanding why you do these things. Okay, and they don't. When you only copy the form and the way it looks on the surface, you don't understand that is just a side effect. The appearance is a side effect of underlying mechanisms that are actually happening.
Right.
And those things are not visible from the surface.
Right. And a great example of that in command culture from your youth was about leading from the front, where the Prussian military's doctrine and hierarchy was a world beater. But one of the big reasons why was because the leaders were expected to lead from the front.
Yeah, they were expected to make decisions, even if they countermanded their superiors, just because the facts on the ground looked like I needed to do this instead. Whatever was exigent based on whoever was in the field was what ruled the day, okay? And the reason why was a quite easy one to understand. It worked!
Yeah, and like if you take that to, say, the context of a software organization, it's certainly different. Say as a manager, that sort of thing, you're not necessarily like, in the trenches or whatever of, say, customer support or something like that, unless you're managing a customer support team. But if you're managing the developers themselves, you should probably be making some commits, bro. You should like get your hands in there, get low down and dirty, because otherwise you're going to make decisions that impact this organization that seem out of touch to some developers because you're not developing. You don't feel their pain. You don't see what the problems in the process are firsthand.
And most importantly, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between who's effective and who's not unless you're right there in the trenches and seeing who's charging doing the bayonet charge and who's cowering in the trench.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
just, you're not going to see it unless you're there. A lot of people think they can see it from behind the front lines, but you can't. You really can't, unless you're directly involved with these people. I mean, if you're not making pull requests, if you're not getting involved in the review process, if you're not actually doing these things, it's going to be very hard for you to understand these sorts of interactions. And then you have the situation where you have, like with the Prussian army and the U.S. Army, they saw the general staff and they thought, oh, this is centralized command and control. This is how it works. When the fact is, centralized command and control, all they were really focused on was general strategy and logistics was like 99% of what they were doing, when the actual tactical decisions on the ground were all being made. It was just Auftrag strategic, mission orders. That's all they were telling them, is that this is what we need to get done, and you just figure out how to get it done.
Which is pretty hard to the Agile Manifesto, that sort of thing, as far as what it was actually trying to get people to think about, was that sort of mission orientation, where you're trying to get this thing done. You're able to think on your feet. You're able to move as the situation changes and get the job done. But
which comes sort of to the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Okay. Why are you not contracting more? Because that is built for Auftrag strategic. Okay. It is built for mission orders. It's, here's the thing I need, here's the budget I have, get it done, I don't care how you do it. Okay? That guarantees that's going to be exactly how it turns out. There's not going to be any kind of fuzzy box or leakage in between those that's going to prevent that action from actually happening. So you can essentially, the way the Prussian military did that was by essentially highly decentralizing their operations. And I think that's sort of what the modern American firm hasn't done a lot, is that they just haven't let their teams actually get the kind of autonomy they actually need to do these jobs. And that's why we see these sorts of strange pathologies that are so popular they get to the top of Hacker News and have these cute little animals to represent them. So
yeah.
All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed our demolition of these cute little zoo animals, and hit the like and subscribe if you like it, and we will see you next time.